My sister-in-law tried to force me to pay for her hotel room just because I have money, and she even called me by the cruel nickname I had in high school. The first time I heard that old nickname again, I was sitting in somebody else's dining room with a paper napkin in my lap, a polite smile glued to my face, and my stomach doing that slow, sick drop like an elevator had lost power. My name is Tamsin. I'm a woman in my mid-20s, living in the United States, and I'm telling you this the way I'd tell a friend at a kitchen table. Not the way people write things when they're trying to sound impressive. When I get too formal, I start sounding like I'm building a case, and I have spent enough of my life feeling like I have to prove I'm not the problem. It came out of my boyfriend's sister's mouth like it was nothing, like it was cute, like she hadn't used it as a weapon. "Hey," she said, tilting her head at me with that familiar sweet expression. "It's been forever, hasn't it, pigeon?" My fingers tightened around my fork so hard the metal bit my skin. The fork actually bent a little, which is such a small, stupid detail, but my brain loves clinging to those things when I'm anxious. Great, I thought. I'm the kind of person who bends cutlery at dinner like a cartoon villain. I didn't answer right away. I blinked and tried to make my face do what it was supposed to do in polite company. Smile, laugh lightly, pretend my nervous system wasn't flipping tables inside my chest. I haven't heard that in years, I managed, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. She shrugged, casual, like the years didn't matter, like she wasn't dragging an entire hallway of memories into her parents' dining room. "You look so different now," she said. "Some people really glow up after school. Some people. Like I wasn't even a person. Like I was a before picture." Her mom was pouring iced tea and asking me about work, and her dad was telling a story about a neighbor's dog that kept escaping. And my boyfriend at that time, was sitting beside me looking both proud and tense, like he was bracing for impact. He knew what that nickname meant to me. We'd talked about it. He'd watched me go quiet the first time his sister said it like she was greeting a pet. I took a sip of tea to buy time. The ice clinked too loudly against the glass. My heartbeat felt visible. And that moment only makes sense if you understand the version of me that came before it, the girl who learned early that being quiet is safer than being right. In high school, I was the kind of kid adults described as mature because I didn't cause trouble. I kept my head down. I did my work. I brought extra pencils because my brain loved being prepared. I thought if I showed up as competent and polite enough, people would have to respect me. I know. I want to reach back through time and shake myself too. She was a grade above me, which mattered in our school like it was a royal title. Older kids had power just by existing. She was loud, pretty in that effortless way, surrounded by friends like she generated gravity. When teachers said her name, they said it with that tone of indulgence, like they were already tired and she hadn't even started. The first time she noticed me, it was because I dropped my tray at lunch. I still remember the sound, the crash, the gasp, the little chorus like people were watching a car wreck. Milk spread across the floor in this white puddle and my cheeks burned so hard I felt dizzy. She laughed, loud enough that people turned to see what was funny. Then she walked past my table and accidentally bumped my elbow so my drink tipped over my open notebook. Sticky soda ran across my homework like it had a plan. She said, "Oops," in this innocent voice that made the whole thing worse. And then she did it again. Not the exact same thing every day because she wasn't lazy about it. She was creative. She'd slap papers out of my hands in the hallway and say, "Butterfingers," like I was clumsy instead of targeted. She'd toss a comment into class discussions just loud enough for people nearby to hear. She'd stand too close behind me in line and whisper, "You," like I smelled bad, and her friends would giggle. The nickname started small, the way infections do. One girl said it under her breath when I passed her locker. Then her friends said it. Then it became a chorus. "Pigeon, pigeon," like they were calling an animal to come eat scraps off the sidewalk. The worst part was how fast it spread. I'd never even talked to most of those kids, but suddenly they all felt entitled to a piece of me. The rumor came next. One day in English class, a girl behind me whispered, "Don't sit there." Another voice hissed, "She's got..." When I finally confronted a girl I thought was sort of my friend, she made a face like I'd offended her just by asking. "People are saying you have lice," she told me. Like, really bad. I'm just telling you. I didn't. I never did. My hair was thick, and I washed it twice because I was paranoid about smelling like cafeteria food, and after that I had actual nightmares about bugs. I went home and scrubbed my scalp until it was tender. My mother knocked on the bathroom door and asked if I was okay, and I lied and said, "Just a long day." At school, kids leaned away from me. They stopped sharing pencils. A teacher made me go to the nurse just to be safe, and I wanted to crawl under the nurse's desk and disappear. The nurse checked my head, found nothing, and smiled sympathetically like she'd seen this 1,000 times. She handed me a hygiene pamphlet anyway, which felt like a quiet confirmation that maybe I really was gross. Teen brains are cruel. Mine was like an unpaid bully intern that worked overtime. Gym class was hell. Not because of sports. I could survive being terrible at volleyball. It was the locker room. I changed in a bathroom stall because I didn't want anyone looking at me too long. One day, someone shoved a note under the stall door. "Bugs love you." I stared at it until my eyes burned, then flushed it like it was alive. There was a bus incident too, because of course there was. I got on late, slid into a seat, and someone said, loud enough for the whole bus, "You, not there." A kid stood up and moved like he was escaping a hazard. The driver didn't look back. People laughed. I stared out the window the whole ride, biting the inside of my cheek until it tasted like pennies. The yearbook was the worst because it felt permanent. There was a photo of me in a club group shot, not even a solo picture, just my face in the corner. Someone got their hands on a copy before distribution and wrote on the page where people sign, and because the staff was rushing the deadline, nobody caught it before printing. It wasn't even some elaborate sabotage, just the kind that works because adults don't double-check what they should when they're erasing a calendar. When the books came out, the scribbles were there like a stamp. Rat. Weirdo. Pigeon. They circled my nose and wrote, beak. I remember thinking, I can't even throw this away because it's in everyone's copy now. The humiliation wasn't private. It was mass-produced. The part people who didn't live it don't understand is how boring cruelty can be. It wasn't always some dramatic fight in the hallway. Most of the time it was small, daily, repetitive. A laugh when I answered a question. A cough when I walked by. A chair moved away from mine in class. A group project where nobody chose me, so the teacher assigned someone who then ignored my ideas and turned in work with their name first. The adults saw fragments. They didn't want paperwork. They didn't want parent meetings. They didn't want to admit something ugly was happening under their watch. I tried telling a teacher once. I caught him after class with my hands shaking, and I said, "People keep calling me names." And he sighed like I was describing a mild inconvenience. "Ignore it," he told me, "and they'll get bored." Then he looked over my shoulder as if he was hoping I'd leave so he could get on with his real life. At home, my parents tried in their own clumsy ways. My mother would ask how school was, and I'd shrug, and she'd say, "Well, you'll be out of there soon. Like, 4 years is soon when you're trapped." My father's advice was always, ignore them. He meant well, but it landed like, if you can't ignore it, it's your fault. So I ignored it so hard I stopped being a person. I joined clubs just to stay in rooms where she wasn't. I worked in the library because it was quiet and the librarian didn't ask personal questions. I ate lunch in a classroom sometimes, pretending I was studying. I got good grades because it was the only place I could control outcomes. If I couldn't control how people treated me, I could at least control my report card. By senior year, she'd mostly moved on, not because she grew a conscience, but because she got bored. She found new targets, new drama, new things to conquer. I was old news. But the damage stayed in my body like a bruise you keep pressing just to confirm it still hurts. When college acceptance letters arrived, I chose a school far enough away that nobody from my high school could accidentally show up and resurrect old roles. Leaving felt like breathing after years underwater. I packed my car and drove away with my hands white-knuckled on the wheel, not because I was scared of traffic, but because I was terrified that freedom would turn out to be fake. The first semester away, I kept waiting for whispers. I'd walk into a lecture hall and brace myself. It didn't happen. Nobody cared. People were busy with their own messy lives. I remember sitting in the dining hall eating alone and realizing that alone didn't mean rejected anymore. It just meant alone. That should have been freeing. Instead, it was terrifying, because if nobody was targeting me, then who was I without the fight? I tried to reinvent myself in small ways. I went to an orientation event and introduced myself first, even though my voice shook. I joined a study group and forced myself to speak even when my face got hot. I picked up a part-time admin job at a campus office. Nothing glamorous, but it made me feel like an adult. I went to the counseling center once and sat on a couch with my hands twisted in my lap, telling a stranger about some bullying like it was a weather report. The counselor said, "That sounds traumatic." And I laughed because the word felt too dramatic for something that had looked so ordinary on the outside. I learned slowly that my nervous system had been trained. The panic wasn't my personality. The self-doubt wasn't a moral failing. It was conditioning. That idea made me angry and relieved at the same time. I met my boyfriend at a campus party years after the worst of it. I didn't trust people quickly. I didn't flirt. I didn't even really go to parties, except that one time because my roommate dragged me out of the apartment like she was rescuing me from an old fainting couch. It was a party at a rented house. Loud music, cheap drinks, people shouting over each other like it was a competition. I was standing in the kitchen, pretending to be fascinated by a bowl of chips, when someone knocked my cup out of my hand. The drink splashed down the front of my shirt, and my whole body tensed like I was about to be laughed at again. Instead, a guy I didn't know stepped between me and the person who did it. "Hey," he said, not furious, just firm. "Watch it." He turned to me and handed me a paper towel. "You okay?" I don't know why that moment hit me so hard. It was small. It was nothing, objectively. But nobody had ever stepped between me and humiliation before. In high school, people either joined in or looked away. I said, "Yeah," even though my voice wobbled. "It's fine." "It's not fine," he said. And he laughed in a way that felt warm, not mocking. "But it's not your fault." He worked as a disc jockey for campus events, which meant he was always around music and always around people, and somehow he didn't have that predatory party vibe. He felt safe, like the kind of person who could be loud without being cruel. He gave me his number and told me to text him if I wanted to grab coffee sometime, and I stared at his contact on my phone for the rest of the night like it was a dare. I went home and took my shirt off like it was evidence. I threw it in the hamper and stood in the bathroom mirror staring at my own face. Tired eyes, tense jaw, hair pulled up like I was always one step away from running. I kept hearing his voice. "It's not your fault." Such a basic sentence, but it felt like someone had finally handed me permission to stop blaming myself for existing. My roommate barged in and asked if I met anyone, and I said no because denial was my default. Then she saw the number on the napkin and squealed like we were in a movie. I rolled my eyes, but my stomach was doing flips. I was scared. I was also curious. Those things can live in the same body. I argued with myself for an hour about whether texting first would make me look desperate. Then I got mad at myself for caring and typed, "Hey, it's the girl who got ambushed by a drink in your kitchen. Thanks again." I deleted it, typed something else, deleted that, and finally hit send with my thumb trembling like I was launching a rocket. He replied fast. "You good? Want to grab coffee tomorrow?" My brain screamed absolutely not. Danger. You can't trust this. And my mouth said yes. We met at a coffee shop near campus and talked for hours. Not in a dramatic soulmate way. Just easy. He told me about his classes, his childhood dog, the way his parents still treated him like he was 12 even though he was an adult. I told him about my major and my part-time job and not much else, because trauma doesn't come out on a first date like a fun fact. When he mentioned his sister, I didn't pay attention at first. "She's older," he said, rolling his eyes affectionately. "She likes to think she runs the world." I joked about older siblings being built different, and he laughed. Then he said her name. It was the same name as my bully. My body reacted before my brain could coach it. Heat crawled up my neck. My palms went damp. I tried to act normal. "Oh," I said. Funny coincidence. He kept talking, and I nodded, and in my head I was doing frantic math. Age, town, school. It's not a super rare name. Hearing it doesn't guarantee anything. But my stomach felt like it was sinking through the chair anyway. It took me 2 more dates to ask. I waited until we were walking back from dinner in the cold night air and said casually, like I didn't care, "Where did your sister go to high school?" He told me. "The same school." I stopped walking. He turned, confused. "What?" My throat tightened. I forced the words out. I think I knew her." He started to smile like he thought it was going to be a cute connection. Then he saw my face and the smile died. "Wait," he said. "Are you okay?" And that's when I told him. Not everything, but enough. The nickname, the rumors, the yearbook, the way I'd spent years wishing I could erase myself. I expected him to get defensive or tell me I was exaggerating. People love to say, "Kids are mean," like that sentence dissolves trauma. He didn't. He looked stunned, then angry. Not at me, at her. "She did that?" he asked, like the words tasted wrong. He asked careful questions. Did I tell a teacher? Did my parents know? Did she ever put her hands on me? Each one made me feel exposed, like I was opening a drawer in my head that I kept nailed shut. I answered some and dodged others. I didn't tell him about the stall note or the bus incident because those memories still made me feel pathetic. Even though I know that's unfair. I'm aware. I'm just not cured. He wanted to confront her immediately. I'm calling her, he said, like family members actually hold each other accountable. I grabbed his wrist. Please don't, I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. If you call her, she'll know I told you, and then she'll make it a thing. He frowned. It is a thing. You don't get it, I said, sharper than I meant. She likes it. If she knows you're mad, she'll spin it until you're the bad guy and I'm the dramatic one. He looked like he wanted to argue. Then he nodded. Okay, he said. We go at your pace. That was the first time I realized he wasn't trying to rescue me. He was trying to respect me. It sounds like the lowest bar on earth, but for me, it was everything. A few weeks later, he did talk to her. Quietly, on the phone while I sat on the couch pretending not to listen. I heard his tone shift from casual to tight. I heard him say, "No, I'm serious." I heard him say, "That's not funny." Then I heard silence, like he was letting her talk herself into a corner. When he came back, his face was hard. She says she doesn't remember, he told me. She says you're exaggerating and you were awkward, and people teased you because you reacted. My chest went cold. Of course. He sat beside me. I told her she doesn't get to rewrite your experience. She laughed. Shame doesn't work on people who think they're entitled to win. That night I had a nightmare where I was back in the cafeteria, and he was sitting with her, smiling like he didn't know me. I woke up panicked and sat on the bathroom floor, hugging my knees, furious at myself for letting the past creep in. So we made an agreement. My past wouldn't get to poison my future. He wouldn't force me into closeness with her. He would back me up if she crossed a line. We would protect what we were building. Dating him felt like learning a new language. I kept expecting hidden motives. When he didn't text back for a few hours, I'd spiral and convince myself he was bored or mad or laughing at me with someone else. Trauma makes you a creative little screenwriter. When he complimented me, I'd deflect like it was a prank. When he introduced me to his friends, I'd overthink every expression on their faces. I also did this embarrassing thing where I tried to be low maintenance, like it was a personality trait. I'd say it's fine when it wasn't fine. I'd pretend I didn't care when I cared deeply. I was terrified that having needs would make me too much. He called me on it once. We were sitting in his car after a movie parked under a streetlight, and I'd been quiet because one of his friends teased me for my teacher voice. It wasn't even cruel, just teasing, but it hit a nerve. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," I lied. He turned off the engine. "Don't do that," he said gently. "If it's something, let it be something." I stared at my hands. I hate when people imitate me, I admitted. It makes me feel stupid. He nodded. "Okay," he said. "Thank you for telling me." And then he did the more unsettling thing. He remembered. The next time someone teased me like that, he stepped in casually. "Don't," he said, and changed the subject. The world didn't end. Nobody called me sensitive. It just shifted. That's what made me fall for him. Not grand gestures, small protections, quiet choices. After about 3 months, it was time to meet families. The inevitable moment where a relationship either becomes real or quietly collapses under pressure. My family meeting him was easy. Not perfect, but easy. My mother can be passive-aggressive, and my father has opinions about everything, but they welcomed him. My younger brother tried to act tough and then ended up asking him for advice about a part-time job. It was normal. Meeting his family was not normal. His parents were warm. They hugged me, fed me, asked me questions about school and work, made jokes about their son being impossible to get out of bed before noon. They were the kind of parents who actually seemed to like each other, which made me weirdly emotional. My bar for healthy family was underground. Then his sister walked in. Adults change, sure, but some people carry their old selves like perfume. The energy was the same. Confidence, entitlement, the way she scanned me like she was cataloging every detail for later use. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. And then she called me that nickname at the table, like she was testing whether it still worked. I survived that dinner by dissociating so hard I could have floated out of my body. Afterward, in the car, my boyfriend asked if I wanted to talk. "Not really," I said, staring out the window. "She shouldn't have said that," he said, voice tight. "I'm going to talk to her." I shook my head. "Don't. It'll just make it worse." So we did what I'd done my whole life. We managed. We stayed polite. We avoided her. At family gatherings, I spoke to his parents, helped clear plates, made small talk with relatives, and treated his sister like an unfortunate piece of furniture I couldn't move. It became a strange truce. She didn't dump drinks on me anymore. She didn't have a hallway full of kids behind her. Instead, she did subtle adult cruelty. She'd compliment my outfit and then ask if it was from one of those discount places. She'd bring up back in the day stories and glance at me like she was waiting for me to flinch. She'd call me sensitive in that joking tone that lets people dismiss you and pretend they're playful. He never forced me to make up. He never insisted we be close. If anything, he started positioning himself between us at gatherings without making it obvious, like a human buffer. When he proposed, it happened in our tiny apartment, not in some dramatic public place. He cooked pasta, burned the garlic bread a little, then got down on one knee while I was still chewing. I laughed and cried and almost choked. He was shaking so hard I had to hold his hand steady. I said yes with my whole heart, even though a tiny part of me thought, this means she's in my life forever. When we told his family, his mother squealed and hugged me like I was already hers. His father clapped their son on the back and said something about, finally. His sister hugged him first, then hugged me with a quick squeeze and whispered, congrats, like she was reading it off a script. Wedding planning turned her into a recurring headache. She had opinions about everything. She wanted the guest list bigger. She wanted the venue fancier. She wanted the whole thing to look like a perfect post and a perfect feed. When I said we were keeping it modest because we didn't want to start our marriage in debt, she smirked and said, of course you don't. There was one planning dinner where she leaned across the table and asked, so are you inviting any of your old friends from school? Her eyes flicked to me. Oh wait, did you have any? My fiancé's fork froze. His mother said, that's rude, but she said it softly, like the word rude could fix her daughter's personality. I snapped, which was not my finest moment. At least I'm not inviting people who only like me when I'm bullying someone, I said. The table went silent. My fiancé put his hand on my knee under the table, grounding me. His sister laughed like she'd won. Wow, she said, still sensitive. Some things never change. I went home furious and embarrassed and spent an hour ranting to my best friend, pacing my living room like a caged animal. My friend said, you're not crazy, she's baiting you. I said, I know. Then I said, but what if I am? Because that's how deep her programming went. I apologized to his parents later for making it awkward, which makes me want to time travel and slap myself. I was so desperate to be the reasonable one. Meanwhile, she could throw a grenade and everyone would just sigh. At the wedding itself, she behaved because there were too many witnesses. But she didn't miss chances to slip in little digs. When I walked down the aisle, she whispered to a bridesmaid, loud enough for me to hear, I can't believe he's actually doing it. When I danced with my husband, she stood nearby with her arms crossed, smiling like she was waiting for a mistake. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself she was background noise. But background noise can still keep you awake. Our first year of marriage was mostly normal stress. Rent, bills, work schedules, figuring out chores without resenting each other. We moved from a cramped apartment with thin walls to a slightly less cramped place with a dishwasher that worked half the time. We argued about money in that very American way where you're technically surviving, but one surprise expense could wipe you out. I was never rich. I wasn't some glamorous, she can pay for everyone person. I was stable. I had a paycheck that didn't bounce, a savings account that wasn't always at zero, and a budget that could handle a normal month. That's it. And that's why what she did later made me feel nauseous. She didn't see me as stable. She saw me as usable. I worked my way up in an office job that paid decent but demanded emotional labor all day. Smiling, problem-solving, making things smooth. My husband worked in tech support, the kind of job where people only notice you when something is broken and then blame you for it. We'd come home exhausted and still have to decide what to cook and whether we could afford new tires. It wasn't glamorous. It was real life. And because life loves timing, my sister-in-law learned how to aim her little comments at the exact cracks that already existed. There was a winter holiday where she insisted on doing a family photo in front of the tree, then angled herself so I got pushed to the edge like an afterthought. When I tried to step closer, she laughed and said, careful, you'll block the kids. There weren't any kids. It was just her parents, my husband, and me. I still ended up in the corner of the picture, half cut off, smiling like an idiot because I didn't want to be the one who made it awkward. There was a birthday dinner for her father where she toasted family loyalty, then turned her gaze right at me and said, some people only show up when it benefits them. She was referencing nothing and everything at the same time. If I asked what she meant, I'd look defensive. If I said nothing, she got to plant the little seed anyway. There was a random barbecue at their house where she asked my husband, loudly, if he missed how fun he was before he got married. She said it like a joke, like she was teasing, but her eyes stayed on me, watching for a reaction. I I sat there holding a paper plate and felt 15 again, watching someone craft humiliation out of normal conversation. I told myself it was better than a fight. I told myself she was an adult now, and maybe this was her version of change. Then she started doing this new thing. She'd call my husband directly and complain about me in a way that sounded like concern. "I just worry she doesn't really like the family," she'd say. "She keeps distance. Is she okay?" She framed my self-protection as a character flaw. The first time he told me, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. "She's making my boundaries look like a mental illness," I said. He sighed. "I know." I told her to stop. "Did she stop?" I asked. He looked at me like I'd already answered my own question. The tension between us wasn't constant, but it was there. Like a low fever. We'd be fine for weeks. Then one family event would stir it, and we'd spend 2 nights untangling it again. It was exhausting in that slow way that makes you wonder if love can survive long-term exposure to someone else's toxicity. One night, after she made a comment about my career obsession and how I should be more fun, I got in the car and cried in the parking lot. My husband found me with my forehead on the steering wheel. "I'm tired," I told him. "I'm tired of being polite to someone who hates me like it's her personality." He sat in the passenger seat and stared straight ahead. "I don't think she hates you," he said quietly. I turned and stared at him. "Then what is this?" He swallowed. I think she hates the way you don't need her." That sentence stuck with me. It felt true in a way that made my skin crawl. In high school, I was easy prey because I wanted acceptance. As an adult, I wasn't trying to impress her, and that made her furious. Some people need to feel like they can still pull your strings. A random Tuesday changed everything. My sister-in-law called. I stared at the screen like it was cursed. I almost didn't answer. My first thought was, she's about to ask for something. I answered anyway because I'm apparently allergic to self-protection. "Hey," she said, too cheerful. "Can we meet for lunch?" I blinked. "Why?" I don't know." She laughed in this rehearsed way. "I'm getting married. I want to start this new chapter with the family actually united. Like for real." Suspicion rose in me like bile. But when I told my husband, his face did this soft, hopeful thing that made my chest ache. "Maybe she's finally growing up," he said. "Maybe she wants to make things right." I wanted to say, or maybe she wants something, but I didn't, because he deserved a sister who wasn't a disaster, and I wanted to be the kind of person who could believe in change. So I met her at a casual lunch spot near my office. Not fancy. Booths, sandwiches, a noisy soda machine, neutral territory. Somewhere I could leave fast. At first, she played normal. She asked about work. She complimented my hair. She made a joke about how marriage changes you. It felt like acting in a play I didn't audition for. Then she got quiet and looked down at her drink. "I've been thinking," she said, "about high school." My heart started pounding. "I wasn't nice to you," she said. "I was cruel." I waited. I didn't trust silence. Silence is usually where the trick hides. She took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry." She even looked like she might cry. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, and for a second, something in me softened. Not forgiveness, exactly. More like exhaustion. Like finally, someone was admitting what happened. I said carefully. "That was a long time ago." "I know," she said quickly. "And I hate that I let it go on. I hate that I never said anything. It's just hard to bring up after all these years, you know?" She paused, then slipped. "And you were kind of a little weird back then, too." She laughed lightly like she'd said something cute. Like, you took things really seriously. There it was. The chill. My body recognized her before my brain caught up. "I took things seriously," I repeated. "You told people I had lice." She waved her hand. "I didn't say that exactly. Things get exaggerated. You know how it is." I stared at her and tried not to walk out. I still wanted to believe this could be real. I wanted my husband to be right. I wanted to stop feeling hunted. "So why now?" I asked. She leaned forward, smile returning. "Because I want us to be friends," she said. "Like actual friends. And I have this idea. My friends and I are doing a little pre-wedding trip. Nothing crazy, just a few days away. And I thought, you should come." My brain stalled. "Me?" "Yes." Her smile widened. "It would be symbolic. Like us choosing each other." Turning the page. I should have said no. I should have said, "You don't get to use me as your redemption arc." But my husband was hopeful, and I was tired of being afraid, and some irrational part of me wanted to walk into her world and not flinch, like I could rewrite the ending. So I said yes. Over the next couple of weeks, she texted constantly. Plans, outfits, jokes, voice notes. She acted like we were best friends. She sent screenshots of a travel deal where you didn't pay the hotel until arrival, calling it pay at property like it was a genius trick. She kept talking about how affordable it was because they could split costs and pay their flights in installments. She'd say stuff like, "We'll keep it low-key," and then send pictures of fancy-looking suites. When I asked about budget, she said, "Don't stress. We're splitting everything." When she wrote, "We're all splitting everything between the 5 of us," I assumed it meant normal splitting, everyone paying their share. Still expensive, but doable. I budgeted. I moved money around. I skipped takeout. I told myself this was me being mature. I told myself that if I could survive that trip, I could finally stop flinching at her existence. The flight down felt like being in the wrong friend group in high school all over again. The 4 of them chattered, took photos, laughed at inside jokes. I smiled when appropriate and tried not to feel like the awkward outsider. One of her friends asked what I did for work, and when I told her, my sister-in-law jumped in with a grin and said, "She makes good money," like she was proud of it, like she'd earned it, like it was an asset she could spend. We landed in a coastal city and took a shared shuttle to the resort. The lobby was bright and full of tourists, the air smelling like sunscreen and fake tropical candles. My sister-in-law walked up to the front desk with me like we were a team. The woman at the desk smiled. "Reservation for 2 suites," she said, typing. "Payment on arrival. I'll just need a card for the full balance and incidentals." I blinked. Full balance? My sister-in-law turned to me with this hopeful, expectant look that made my stomach drop before she even spoke. "You can put it on your card, right?" she said. "I told the girls you would. Since you make good money. And it's for my wedding. It'll be fine." It was like time slowed. I could hear the lobby fountain. I could hear a kid whining somewhere. I could hear my own breath. My brain tried to bargain. Pay, avoid the scene, get through the weekend, pretend it never happened. But paying wouldn't end it. It would teach her again that cornering me works. And I didn't have some endless pool of money anyway. I had a budget. I had bills. I had a life that would absolutely be hurt if I suddenly absorbed everyone else's vacation. "No," I said, and my voice came out louder than I expected. "I'm not putting that on my card." Her friends started realizing what was happening. One asked how much it was, and the desk clerk read the total out loud. Their faces changed. They'd been told a fairy tale. She'd booked something expensive on purpose, counting on me to fold. My sister-in-law laughed nervously, like I was the one being dramatic. "Come on," she whispered. "Don't do this here. It's already set up. We'll pay you back, obviously." Obviously. Like I was ridiculous for questioning it. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and scrolled through our messages. No mention of me paying. Not once. "I never agreed to that," I said. "And I have the messages." One of her friends frowned. "Wait, what? I thought we were splitting it." Another friend's eyes widened. "You told us it was handled." My sister-in-law's cheeks flushed. She looked around like she could still control the room if she just played it right. "Guys, relax," she said. "It's a misunderstanding." It wasn't. I turned to the desk clerk. "Can you separate it?" I asked. "I need a room for myself. Just my own reservation. Just something basic. 1 bed, no suite, no drama." The clerk nodded. Professional. "We can do that." My sister-in-law grabbed my arm, nails digging in. "Don't embarrass me," she hissed under her smile. I leaned in and said low, "You tried to sell me at the front desk like I was your credit card. This is you embarrassing you." I checked into a basic room, took my suitcase, and left them standing there. I didn't go to their suite. I didn't join their trip. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall while adrenaline drained out of me. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a flood of messages from her. Voice notes, angry texts, guilt trips. "How could you do this? You ruined everything. It's my wedding." I didn't respond. I turned my phone face down like it was toxic. Later that night, I heard arguing in the hallway, voices sharp and messy. Someone cried. My sister-in-law kept repeating, "It's my wedding," like that sentence was a credit limit. I stayed behind my door and booked the earliest flight home. In the airport the next morning, I felt like I was moving through syrup. The adrenaline crash was brutal. I kept replaying her face at the desk, that confident assumption that I'd fold. I kept hearing the word obviously, like my refusal was the weird part. On the plane back, I blocked her number. I blocked her on every app I could think of. I didn't want her in my phone. I didn't want her in my pocket. I didn't want her in my life. When I landed, my hands were shaking so badly I had to sit in my car with both palms flat on the steering wheel until they calmed down. I kept thinking I should go straight home, but my apartment suddenly felt too small, like the walls would echo her voice back at me. So I drove to a quiet parking lot, stared at a blank wall, and called my husband. My voice cracked as I told him everything. Every detail. The desk, the card, the way she said obviously like I was obligated. He was silent for a long second. Then he said, "What the hell?" I heard him inhale slow, like he was trying not to explode. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I pushed you into this." "You did?" I snapped, and immediately hated myself because it wasn't just him. It was my own stupid hope. "I told you she hadn't changed. I told you." "I know," he said, voice raw. "Let me handle it. Please. Let me talk to my parents first. She's going to lie. I want to catch her in it." I wanted him to choose me instantly, loudly. I wanted him to march into their house and burn her to the ground with the truth. But he wasn't wrong about one thing. His sister was a professional liar, and his family had this habit of smoothing over conflict until it rotted. He'd grown up watching arguments get swallowed. His strategy wasn't protecting her. It was trying to survive the family machine without getting crushed by it. So I swallowed my anger and said, "Fine, but I'm not going to be quiet about this." I got home later and took a shower so hot my skin turned pink. I stood under the water and tried to wash the lobby out of my hair like it was smoke. I kept hearing her whisper, "Don't embarrass me," and my body kept reacting like I was the one who did something wrong. By the time I got out, my throat hurt like I'd been swallowing rocks. My husband came home from work and didn't even take his shoes off before he hugged me. I didn't cry right away. I'm a delayed reactor. I held it together until he said, "I'm sorry," again, and then it hit me like a wave. I cried into his shoulder and hated myself for crying, because part of me still believed tears were ammunition someone could use. He just held me, steady, and that steadiness made me angrier at his sister. How dare she still have access to my body, years later, with one stupid nickname and one stupid stunt. That night he called his parents. He told them what happened. His mother sounded horrified. His father sounded confused. They asked to speak to their daughter. Of course, her version was different. In her story, I offered to cover the lodging as a gift. In her story, I backed out at the last second and humiliated her in front of her friends. In her story, I was jealous and trying to sabotage her happiness. His parents didn't know what to believe at first, which stung more than I expected. Not because they owed me blind loyalty, but because I'd been polite and helpful and respectful for years. And still the default was, maybe she's exaggerating. She panicked when she realized her parents might hesitate to bankroll her wedding. She'd been counting on them for around $12,000. Her wedding budget was closer to $22,000. I didn't know those numbers because I'm psychic. I knew them because his mom called my husband in a near meltdown, listing amounts like she was trying to figure out what was real and what was fantasy. "We told her we could help with this much," she said, voice shaking. "But she's acting like everything is paid for. I don't understand." My husband told her to ask for receipts. That suggestion alone apparently set off a hurricane. Her fiancé called my husband later that week, sounding like a man realizing he'd been sold a lie. My husband put the call on speaker because he wanted me to hear it too, which I appreciated in this weird way. It was him saying, "I'm not hiding the mess from you anymore." The fiancé's voice was strained. "Did she really try to make your wife pay for the hotel?" he asked. My husband said yes. There was a long silence. Then the fiancé said, "She told me you two offered. She said it was your idea." I laughed once, sharp, because even from across a phone line I could feel the gaslighting attempt. Like she could rewrite reality just by insisting harder. Apparently, during one argument, she admitted she booked the resort suites without paying anything up front because she planned to get me to cover it. Like it was a normal plan. Like I was a line item in her budget. Her fiancé started asking questions. About money, about debt, about why she had so many cards, about why she'd been secretive. And then the whole thing started to crack. Meanwhile, she went after me. First, she emailed my workplace using our general public contact address. She wrote a long, dramatic message about how I was emotionally unstable, and she used phrases like hostile environment and implied I was a danger. Anything that hinted at danger automatically triggered protocol at my workplace. It wasn't personal. It was policy. But it still felt personal when my supervisor called me into her office with that careful face. Then my sister-in-law posted vague quotes on a social media app about betrayal and some women who steal joy and family shouldn't abandon you when you need them most. People in her comments ate it up. "Protect your peace. they wrote, like she was some wise monk and not a woman who tried to trap me at a front desk. I made the mistake of posting something petty back. Just a short story about grown adults who think your paycheck is community property. It felt good for 5 minutes. Then I deleted it, because I could practically hear her cackling. But the damage was done. The next day at work, when I walked in, a coworker who usually joked with me went quiet. She looked at me and then looked away. That tiny shift hit me harder than a direct confrontation. Adults don't chant nicknames in hallways. They just change their tone. They just stop laughing at your jokes. They just let you know you're being discussed. My supervisor called me into her office and asked if I had personal conflict that could spill into work, because someone had emailed serious allegations. I sat there with my face hot and my palms sweating, and I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam my hands on her desk and yell, "This is what she does. This is her hobby." Instead, I took a breath and said, "I can prove it's false." I went home that night and started collecting evidence like my sanity depended on it. Screenshots of every message about the trip. The part where she said splitting everything and never once mentioned me paying. Screenshots of her vague posts lined up with the timeline. The messages from her friends, every little thing that showed the pattern. I barely slept. I'd close my eyes and immediately picture the front desk again. Her hand on my arm, the clerk waiting, the total being read out loud like a sentence. I'd wake up sweating and check my email like I was waiting for another attack. When morning came, I walked into work with a stomachache and a smile I didn't feel. Because that's the skill bullying teaches you. Perform normal, even when you're falling apart. Human Resources called me in that afternoon, not because they were mad, more because they had to document. I sat in a small room with a neutral painting on the wall and a box of tissues that looked untouched. And I explained calmly that someone with a personal vendetta was trying to smear me. I heard myself sound too composed, like I was rehearsing, and I worried that being calm would make me look less believable. Then I worried that being emotional would make me look unstable. There is no winning when someone has already painted you as a problem. I handed over the screenshots. I pointed out timelines. I showed the text where my sister-in-law admitted she emailed the workplace and created the posts. The HR rep's expression shifted slowly from polite professionalism to genuine alarm. "She emailed the general inbox?" she asked, like she couldn't believe someone would do that. "Yes," I said, "and she'll keep doing it if she thinks it works." They looped in the information technology team. They told me not to engage publicly, not to post responses, and to forward anything else to them. I nodded like that was easy. Inside, I wanted to vomit, because every step of handling it correctly still required me to relive it and prove it and package it neatly so other people could decide if my reality was real. When I got home that night, I sat on the floor of my closet for a while. Not for drama. It was just quiet in there, soft. A place where I could let my face fall without anyone seeing. My husband found me with my knees pulled to my chest and sat beside me without asking questions. He put his shoulder against mine like an anchor. "I hate that she can still do this to you," he whispered. "I hate that it works," I whispered back. That week, his parents tried to mediate. His mother called me and said, "Can we all just talk?" in that pleading tone people use when they want peace but don't want responsibility. She suggested we meet at their house and clear the air. The phrase "clear the air" made my skin itch. Air didn't need clearing. She needed consequences. Still, I went, because I'm still that girl who thinks being reasonable will save me. We sat in their living room. His father kept clearing his throat like he had a speech in him but couldn't find it. His mother kept patting her own knee, nervous. My husband sat beside me, tight-jawed. Then my sister-in-law walked in like she was entering court, chin lifted, eyes sharp. She started crying immediately. Like instantly. It was almost impressive. "I can't believe you would do this to me," she sobbed. And by do this, she meant refuse to fund her vacation and exist with boundaries. His mother turned toward me with a hopeful look, like she expected me to fix it by being soft. That look triggered something old in me. The adult version of, just ignore it. Just smooth it. Just take it. "I'm not apologizing," I said calmly, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. My sister-in-law snapped her head up. "So you admit you wanted to ruin my wedding?" My husband leaned forward. "Stop," he said. "You tried to trap her at the front desk." "It was a misunderstanding," she insisted, eyes wet and blazing. "She makes good money." I laughed, a dry sound. "We're not talking about a lottery win," I said. "We're talking about a normal paycheck. We have bills. We have a budget. You don't get to decide it won't hurt because you want something." That's when her father finally spoke. "Did you email her job?" he asked. voice low. She hesitated for half a beat. I saw her calculating. Then she turned to his mother, crying harder. I was desperate, she said. I was stressed. I needed help. And she humiliated me. His mother flinched. Honey, I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my spine felt solid. This is exactly what she did in school, I said. She pokes, she pushes. Then she cries so she looks like the victim when someone finally says no. My husband stood with me, quiet but present. We left before it turned into another circular argument. In the car, my husband's hands shook on the steering wheel. I'm sorry, he said again. I know, I said, and I meant it. But sorry doesn't erase damage. It just acknowledges it. A few days later, her fiancé ended things. Not dramatically, just done. He discovered hidden debt across multiple cards and realized she'd been lying about money the whole relationship. He canceled the wedding, he moved out, he blocked her. She moved back in with her parents because she couldn't afford her apartment anymore. She'd already lost her steady paycheck. She still had the storage space lease she couldn't get out of for the online decor business. She had boxes and inventory and a fantasy that wasn't paying rent. And she blamed me for all of it. My husband and I argued more than we ever had. Not because he defended her, but because he was devastated. And grief makes people weird. He'd say, I can't believe she did this. Like disbelief itself was a shield. I'd say, of course she did. And then feel like a monster for sounding so blunt about his sister. One night, after another round of her vague posts, and a message from a cousin that said, hope you're happy, my husband said, I just wish you'd given her a chance. I stared at him. I did, I said, voice shaking. I got on a plane. I sat at that lunch. I walked into that lobby. How many chances do I have to give before it counts? He looked like he wanted to argue. Then his shoulders dropped. You're right, he whispered. You're right. I'm sorry. We decided we needed to confront her in front of the whole family. Not to humiliate her, she was perfectly capable of humiliating herself, but to stop the story from being rewritten again. I wanted his parents to see the truth without her translating it through her victim narrative. So we waited for Sunday dinner. His parents did Sunday dinner like clockwork. Same time, same table, same food. Their house smelled like laundry detergent and roasted chicken, and the kind of stability I used to envy. When we walked in, she was already there, sitting like she owned the place, chatting with their mother like nothing happened. She looked tired, but she still had that edge, that spark of entitlement. She saw me and her mouth tightened. Dinner started polite. Weather, work, a neighbor's new baby, a random story about someone's car trouble. I sat there with my phone in my lap, heart pounding so hard my ears felt full. Halfway through, she made a comment. Casual and cruel. Must be nice, she said, glancing at me. To have money and still choose to be stingy. Her father frowned. That's enough, she shrugged. I'm just saying. I set my fork down. My hands were steady, which surprised me. Maybe anger can be a kind of calm when you're finally done. I'm going to read something, I said. Everyone went quiet. My husband reached for my hand under the table. I squeezed back once, like a signal. I've got this. I opened my phone and pulled up the messages. I read them out loud. Her texts about splitting costs. The complete absence of any agreement that I would pay. Then the messages from her friends confirming she tried to manipulate them too. Then the confession text she sent my husband, where she admitted she emailed my workplace and did the posts because I deserved to suffer. Her mother's face went pale. She covered her mouth. Her father stared at his daughter like he was seeing her for the first time. My sister-in-law laughed, high and sharp. Are you kidding me? I kept going until there was nowhere for her to hide. When I finished, she slammed her hand on the table. So what? She snapped. You have money. You always have. You could have helped. You could have paid and it wouldn't even hurt you. There it was again. The same logic as high school. If you're weaker, you deserve to be used. If you have something, it belongs to me. I don't owe you anything, I said, voice shaking now. Not my money. Not my peace. Not my body standing there to take your hits so you can feel powerful. She stood up so fast her chair scraped. You're ruining my life. Her father stood too. No, he said, loud. You ruined your life. She stared at him, stunned, like she genuinely thought her parents would always save her. Her mother started crying. Why would you do this? She asked. Why would you try to hurt her like this? My sister-in-law's face twisted. Because she's not better than me, she shouted. She just got lucky. She has the job. She has the nice life. And you all act like she's some saint because she's quiet and polite. She's fake. quiet and polite, as if being quiet wasn't something I learned as survival. Her parents gave her an ultimatum: start real therapy and take responsibility, or leave their house. She stormed out, slammed the front door, screamed something from the driveway about never coming back and all of us being horrible, and then she was gone. After that dinner, everything felt quieter but raw. My husband and I snapped at each other over dumb little things, not because we were angry at each other, but because we were both scared. Him of what it meant about his family, and me of being targeted again. We sat on the edge of our bed that night and said the honest parts out loud. That he felt guilty, that he felt ashamed, that he loved his sister but couldn't keep pretending she was harmless, that I felt exhausted, that I felt angry, that I felt stupid for ever thinking she'd changed. I don't want her to take anything else from you, he said, voice breaking. I don't want her to take anything else from you either, I said, because that was the part people forget. Even when someone hurts you, it can still hurt to watch them hurt the people you love. A couple of weeks later, my therapist, yes, I had one by then, because my nervous system needed help, asked me what I would say to the teenage version of myself in that cafeteria. I stared at the carpet and said, "You're not dirty." My therapist nodded like that sentence mattered. It did. I didn't even realize how much of my adult self was still trying to prove I wasn't dirty. My husband started therapy too. Not because I demanded it, but because he couldn't carry the weight of loving someone who kept choosing cruelty. We did sessions together, not to dissect every detail like a legal case, but to learn how to stop her from living in our arguments. His parents stopped excusing her. They told relatives simply, "She lied and tried to corner money. We're not enabling it." It wasn't a dramatic family announcement. It was a boundary. And it hurt them. I saw it in his mother's face at the grocery store when she ran into someone and forced a smile. My sister-in-law bounced from friend to friend because nobody wanted her in their space for long. One friend kicked her out after she borrowed cash. Another got tired of the constant drama. Her storage space became her last option. She started sleeping on an air mattress in that little room full of boxes and cheap inventory. She'd shower at a low-cost gym. She'd post dramatic updates about starting over, but fewer and fewer people reacted. Then she tried one last move. She messaged my husband offering to make peace if he could lend her money, $5,000. Like she was ordering a pizza. My husband showed me the message. His hands were shaking. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. I stared at the screen and felt tired all the way to my bones. This was the part where people always ask, "Why didn't you sue?" Or, "Why didn't you call the police?" And I get it. I really do. But I didn't want my life to become a full-time project about her. I wanted my job safe, my home quiet, and my marriage intact. I wanted the drama to end, not transform into a new hobby with paperwork. So I typed the response myself, because I needed to, because it felt like closing a door. "You tried to sell me at the front desk like I was your credit card," I wrote. "I don't owe you anything. Do not contact us again." Then I blocked her. A winter holiday came and went without her. His parents hosted, like always, but her seat stayed empty. It was the first time I'd ever seen a family actually hold a boundary that hurt. His mother cried quietly in the kitchen while she cooked. His father stared out the window like he was waiting for a ghost. I felt guilty, even though I knew I shouldn't. That's the thing about being trained to take blame. It sticks. Life slowly became quieter. I got promoted later that year, not because of drama, but because I was good at my job. We moved into a small house. Nothing fancy, just ours, with a mortgage we could handle. We replaced a broken couch. We adopted a stubborn little dog that barked at leaves like they were enemies. Normal adult milestones that felt like miracles because my nervous system still expected disaster. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself waiting for my phone to buzz with another attack, another rumor, another nickname. Trauma doesn't leave just because you blocked a number. It lives in your muscles. But the longer the silence lasted, the more I realized something. I wasn't being chased anymore. I wasn't trapped in that hallway. I wasn't the kid with the soda-soaked notebook. I was a grown woman sitting in my own living room with my husband beside me, the door locked, and the right to decide who gets access to me. And no, it didn't feel like a trophy. It felt like a scar finally allowed to stop bleeding. One afternoon, months later, I watched our dog bark at a pigeon on the sidewalk like it was the greatest threat in the world. The bird just bobbed away, unbothered, and for the first time I felt something like a grin instead of a flinch. It was such a stupid, ordinary moment, but it hit me. A word she used to shrink me doesn't get to own my body anymore. I didn't get an apology that meant anything. I didn't get a perfect ending where everyone hugs and learns a lesson. What I got was smaller and maybe more real. I stopped letting her use me as a mirror to make herself feel bigger. If she ever changes, it won't be because I saved her. It'll be because she finally looks at her own mess and decides to clean it up. And if she never changes, then at least I won't be standing there holding the towel, cleaning up the spill she made on purpose.